Hey everyone, and welcome to SkillCapped. My name is Dr. Zora, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the return of Sage and how she went from one of the least picked agents to one of the most popular sentinels to date. With Valorant still being a very young game, players are constantly discovering and developing the meta, which includes changing what are considered the best agents. When Valorant was first released, Sage was arguably considered the best agent. Every ability was so strong. She had a recharging heal to full health, she had a wall that was super hard to take down, she had slow orbs to stall for days, and she had a resurrection. Everything about her kit was so good, which is why she received some massive nerfs on patch 1.07 in particular that led everyone to steer away from playing her at all. And now months later, without any further big changes being done to Sage's abilities, she suddenly has bounced back to being one of the top 5 most popular agents played. In Immortal, she is the second most picked agent, and in professional play, she went from being an agent that was rarely selected to a top 10 agent. In NA, she rose up to a 26% pick rate on the VCT Masters, and even more shockingly, if we go into the EU region, Sage had an astounding 69% pick rate on their VCT Masters. All of this without any new changes being done to Sage since her nerf on patch 1.07. We're going to delve into how Sage has rose back to fame in recent months and why you should start picking her as well if you haven't already. Without further ado, let's get right into it. We're going to start today's video with our question of the day. With today's topic being about Sage, we want to know what your current thoughts are on Sage as well. The information that will be provided in this video is based on data gathered from our team, but we want to hear what players are thinking as well. Before the video starts, make sure to drop your thoughts in the comment below, as we want to hear what your unbiased opinions are currently on this agent. To see why Sage has returned to play, we need to see why she fell to the bottom first. Prior to patch 1.07, Sage had already received a number of nerfs, however she remained extremely powerful and thus continued to have a very high pick rate. In patch 1.07, Sage received some very significant nerfs to her abilities. She could only heal for 60 health instead of 100, her slow orbs were drastically reduced in size by 30%, and her barrier orb now starts off with half health and takes 3 seconds to go up to full health. What stood out from this patch was the nerfs to Sage's heal and barrier orb. Because Sage was no longer able to heal players to full health, players' first reactions was that her heal was essentially useless. Similarly, with Sage's barrier orb having less health when activated, players found it extremely easy to break down, and this combination makes Sage seem quite underwhelming. 2 of her abilities seem pretty meh now, plus with her abilities being nerfed already in a previous patch, all of Sage's normal abilities seem pretty awful. This is why her pick rate absolutely tanked after this patch, as Sage was no longer this absolute beast of an agent like she was when Valorant was first released. Now, without any other changes having been done other than a very minor buff to her Sage wall since, her pick rate has mysteriously gone up, and the reasoning is actually quite simple. When an agent gets heavily nerfed, people are quick to assume that it's now a bad agent and thus switch over to a different agent without really trying the agent out after the nerf. People are quick to forget that in a competitive game such as Valorant, the goal of the developers is to make sure every agent is as balanced as possible so that every agent is a viable pick to play. Before the nerfs, Sage was so strong compared to the rest of the pack that it was a no-brainer to select her over other agents. Now with her nerfs, yes, Sage is much worse than she was, but she came from somewhere that was at the tippy top of the Valorant agents. With the nerfs, she's no longer overpowered, but she's still a good agent. When going into duels, there's actually a good chance that players will still have over 40 health, in which the Sage heal will still get them back to 100. Even if you can't get someone back to 100, the 60 health can still help a player tank an extra bullet or two, which can make all the difference between winning or losing a fight. While Sage's heal is no longer a guarantee back to 100, it still gets you there in a majority of situations and is still a good ability. It's not phenomenal like it was before, but it's still good. This is essentially the case with all of her abilities currently. For example, even though Sage's barrier orb can be shot down fairly easily with the rifle when it's triggered, it really can only take down one piece of the wall down before it fortifies. If players decide to push off that, they're working with a very narrow space where it's very easy for Sage to punish a player for that push. That, along with her slow orbs, which can still further slow down an enemy's push, and if the enemy still decides to go in after that, the kill is practically handed right to you. In particular, Sage's wall is still very strong against pistol and anti-eco rounds. Most of the time, it's going to be 1 or 2 players shooting down Sage's barrier orb, and with pistols in particular, the wall takes several clips to actually break down. Sage's wall is arguably her strongest ability, and we can see that it still holds up even after her nerfs. Now that we've talked about her normal abilities, we need to go over Sage's ultimate, Resurrection. There weren't too many changes to this ability, but it remains one of the highest tier ultimates in the game. Being able to revive a player allows your team to have more options, such as going for aggressive plays without worrying about losing a man. If these plays are successful, you either end up with a free pick and 5 vs 4 situation, or a 1-for-1 trade where you can resurrect your teammate and now it's a 5 vs 4 again. This ultimate can be a huge game changer in rounds, and as players see that her abilities still work, they're starting to bring Sage back into their agent pools. So overall, Sage's abilities are still good when comparing them to all the other abilities in the game. They're no longer overpowered, but they still make a stand, and because of that, players are realizing that Sage still has a place in the game. She isn't absolutely necessary like she used to be, but she's still a good pick, and having her would be a good asset. Now that we've gone over all of Sage's abilities, we need to talk about 2 Sage metas that really helped accelerate her return to the game. And speaking of acceleration, if you want to accelerate your own play and quickly improve, then go to SkillCapped.com to unlock our hyper improvement system that will teach you everything you need to blast through the rankings in Valorant. The link will be provided in the description below. The first is the shotgun meta. Shotgun Sage has greatly rose to fame in the recent months. While it mainly highlighted how powerful the Bucky was prior to its nerfs, her abilities also help put Sage in situations where she has a better chance of getting those kills. For example, Sage's barrier orb narrows down the area that enemies can push from. With less space to work off of, this makes it easier for Sage to peek enemies with the Bucky. She can work through the Sage wall to isolate angles and line up her crosshair onto her enemies to pick them off one by one. While Sage's abilities worked well with shotguns, it wasn't exactly the best, as agents such as Jett and Raze are much better at closing the gap between enemies. However, Shotgun Sage was what started the meta with shotguns, and players were astounded to see it work. Even though she wasn't the best pick, players were excited by the challenge of using shotguns first of all, but also using an agent who wasn't fully suited to take advantage of the shotgun meta. Unfortunately, the Bucky has been recently nerfed, however the Judge remains a super powerful shotgun and is allowing the Shotgun Sage meta to live on. We made a complete guide on the Shotgun Sage meta, so if you're curious on challenging yourself in playing Shotgun Sage, then make sure to check that guide out. Even with the changes, she's still incredibly powerful to play, and again was a big reason that players overall have leaned back to Sage. Next is the Sage Wall meta that has become incredibly popular in recent months as well. Typically, you'll see Sage Walls being used pretty standard, where you use it to block off a certain choke point. That's all nice and dandy, but if you want to take things to the next level, you want to try these aggressive Sage Walls. There are multiple unique Sage Walls that you can do in the game that can be absolutely broken. There are several techniques to building the Sage Walls, but essentially you're using your player model to give your Sage Wall an extra block in a spot that it normally would break in, since it doesn't have any support otherwise. For example, a common way to get these Sage Walls off is by jumping backwards, and when your model is in line with the object that you're trying to place the Sage Wall in, you activate the barrier orb, and this extra block gives you weird off angles that you can work with to surprise your enemies. You can use these walls aggressively for off angles, but another example of using the Sage Walls is getting insane one-way angles. An example of this is on logs in Haven, where you do the same technique on the lower logs to create a wall where you can see the enemy's toes if you crouch, while the enemies won't be able to see you unless they crouch as well. These sorts of insane Sage Walls that you can perform are another big reason that Sage has rose to fame. Her abilities are still 100% solid, but these little tricks and challenges that have been created have escalated her pick rate for both professional competitive play as well as casual play. Being able to play an unorthodox style is very exciting, and it is always fun to see players' reactions when the play is successful. There are so many little tricks like this with Sage that has made her an attractive pick for both having fun and still being useful to the team. Alright, so if you haven't already, still make sure to leave a comment on what your thoughts are with Sage. Did this video change your opinions, or do you agree with most of the points that were made? And while you're down there, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get more premium guides just like this one with one goal in mind: helping you become a better player. We here at SkillCapped want to thank you for watching. We'll catch you in the next. I'm Dr. Zora, and good luck out there.